Paranormal Punches is part of the Podbelly Network. Go to podbelly.com for more great podcasts.
Hey, y'all. This is Frank the Bigfoot, and you're listening to the Paranormal Puncher.
Hey, friends. Welcome to a special episode of Paranormal Punchers. I'm Mark.
I'm Alicia.
And we are here today with Taylor Guterson. Did I say it right or did I butcher it?
No, Guterson. You got it. Thanks, guys, for having me on your show.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us. Now, Taylor, you're the writer and director for the upcoming movie, Hunting Bigfoot.
That's right. Yeah, Hunting Bigfoot. Centers around a group of Bigfoot obsessives here in my hometown of North Bend, Washington. Primarily John Green, who has been trying to prove the existence of Bigfoot for the last decade and dedicated his life to this pursuit.
Yeah, now in the tagline is, did he really see it or was it just in his head? And I feel the movie takes us on that journey where I was questioning, did he see it? But then I was also at a certain points of the movie on his side. Like, I don't care if he made it up. I'm tired of people giving him a rough time about this.
I know.
Like the artist. He commissioned an artist to paint a painting of what he saw, and then she still was like, well, I kind of made it look like a stump. Because I think you just saw a stump. That one, number one, was funny. But it got even funnier when I when I put two and two together about the film.
Sure thing. In that particular moment, John feels insulted and refers to her painting as a stick insect. John does get dismissed a lot by a lot of different folks, and that is the question throughout the film. Did he really see it, or was it just in his mind? Early on in the film, within the first 5 minutes, you hear John tell his story. It's somewhat brief within the context of the film itself. It has to be, but I have hours of footage of John, telling the story, and he does tell it in quite vivid and I would say unusual detail, at least in comparison to other, Bigfoot encounter stories I've heard.
Now, the movie itself it's a documentary, but it's kind of, I want to say mockumentary, but it's definitely shot in a documentary style. Mm-hmm. But it is a narrative, right?
Yes. The genre or the reality or the lack thereof is quite honestly very difficult to pinpoint. I don't like to refer to it as a mockumentary because I'm not mocking documentaries, and there is much throughout this film that truly is a documentary and is very much real, or in the essence of real, or a recreation of someone's experience or story. But that said, there are enough sequences throughout the film that are not truly captured in the spirit of an actual documentary, which makes it sort of a challenging film to maybe define in the traditional sense. I hope that doesn't take away necessarily from the experience of watching the film, but that certainly is the case, that it cannot be fully defined in a box.
I don't think it, from me anyway, it did not take away from it. It just made me realize a little bit more about the movie, and I don't think this is an insult, but also it's a bit of a comedy because there's a lot of funny moments, whether they're intentional or not, because John is an extremely interesting man. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, as interesting as is, he, other people just as weird and interesting. I use weird in a kind way. I'm not making fun of him. Some of his friends were extremely interesting as well.
Yeah.
Like even the other people that had Bigfoot sightings, almost to the point where they wanted to get into an argument and a fight with John because they disagreed so much on different types of Bigfoot sightings.
Yeah, no question. and in this, world of, Bigfoot, obsessives, or however you may want to call it, it can be between certain people, quite common for there to be sort of a disagreement, or perhaps trying to discredit someone else's experience to more, perhaps validate your own. Bob Pyle, who's seen throughout the film and wrote the book Crossing the Dark Divide Where Bigfoot Walks, actually spoke to me about this in great detail, this sort of oftentimes conflict or discrediting between people in this community. Now, that's not certainly universal. That's not everybody. There's much of this community that bonds really well together and thrives together. But in John's case, certainly there are some folks that were really questioning him, and he was questioning them, and at times that could turn into a bit of an argument, and an absurd argument from time to time.
For sure. And John was a fascinating character to follow through this movie. How did you meet him?
Yeah. Somewhat of a long story, but I'll try and keep it brief. I wanted to make a film about Bigfoot obsessives, culture of people who've sort of dedicated their lives to this. And having moved here now 7 years ago to North Bend, just from Seattle, I joined Mount Si Sports and Fitness, which is the gym here. It's seen in the film. Ben Cockman, that's his real name. He owns it. And I sort of became aware of, a group of people that are interested in Bigfoot, but none of them really seemed necessarily like a natural fit as a lead in a film. And I had known John vaguely, just in sort of other area of life where I grew up on Bainbridge Island in Puget Sound here near Seattle. And I knew John had some interest in Bigfoot, or it had, some people said he had the story. I didn't know what it was, but I reached out to him and sort of learned more about where he was and what he was doing. And, after talking with him, I concluded he might be the perfect person to sort of lead this. And he was interested in sort of participating. And so that's how that evolved.
Okay. Is he that interesting? Just every day? Like in the movie, he's living out in the woods trying searching to get that, the next sighting. He has to prove this is right. But, always he takes a break, comes out of the woods, and goes to the mountainside gym and works out because, you can't be walking around the woods if you're not in shape.
That's right. No, he is very much that interesting in real life, and that's why I wanted him in this film. He's really not acting. He really isn't. I mean, there's always an element of acting when the camera's there, of course. There is for anyone, even in a documentary that's, a true documentary, that's the case. But he is that interesting, and that's, again, why I wanted him in the film. And he is out there. He's out there right now looking for Bigfoot. He's not out there in all sort of the exact same ways you see in the film. I mean, just the last couple of weeks, he's actually been driving all over Cle Elum and Ellensburg, which is more central Washington, following up on some leads that have actually developed because of this film is out there and people are contacting him.
Oh, wow. So does he camp out like that days on end out in the woods by himself?
That's a perfect area example to talk about where the sort of fiction and reality meets. He does not camp out anywhere near, I would say, the amount that it could be hinted at or represented in the film. He does some, but not necessarily, I'd say, how it may play in the film. His more common approach is to drive somewhere, talk with some people, scout some areas out. Again, recently in Ellensburg, again, central town in central Washington, he's been scouting some huts, some dwellings that people are, it's unclear on how they came about. And then he'll stay in a hotel, but most of the time. But he can stay out there, but he's not maybe living out in the wilderness in such a rough fashion all the time as represented, with his ripped jeans and his oatmeal.
Right. I know. I was like, just the oatmeal alone, like really all the time. But also, I mean, it's Washington State. I'm like, there's a lot of critters bears and things that run around. I mean, just sleeping out there by yourself would be frightening.
Right.
While we were filming this, this was May 2017, about a mile from the area that John and I had spent considerable amount of time in filming, there was a very rare, but it happened, cougar attack on 2 bikers, and one of them died.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
This was right in the area we were filming. So, I mean, it's rare, but this stuff does happen, and it happened like right in our backyard while we were doing this. So yeah, you gotta be cautious.
Goodness.
Yeah. Now, when you were out there within the film, you were on some serious terrain, at least in my opinion, PA, being out in the woods. Any injuries? And also I'm curious, like what cameras you took out
Sure.
to film. Because I mean, again, it looked really, really great.
Well, thank you. There were no serious injuries. There were times, people fell, including myself, and, twisted an ankle or something, or, dinged a fingernail. No serious injuries. I mean, the biggest thing is just trying to keep comfortable. You get cold really easily, especially your hands operating the camera equipment. And John never has the right gear. I don't know if you see what he wears out there, but he's wearing like jeans, and I mean, he just never has the right. He wears like a baseball cap instead of a winter hat when it's 20 degrees.
In the movie, I'm pretty sure one pair of jeans had the crotch area was ripped out. So.
You caught that. A lot of jeans are ripped up pretty good. Even the gloves he wears, they're not winter gloves. They're like $5 Home Depot gloves that you might use to like rake leaves. They don't keep you warm. But anyhow, my approach to filming in the elements is you really have to keep it as simple as possible and not get overwhelmed or consumed with your gear, because you really need to focus on your narrative and your storytelling. So, I mean, it's just me out there. I don't have an assistant with me or a crew. And my approach is to actually carry the camera fully built the entire time. I don't carry it in a pack and then build it out. I'm just carrying it everywhere. I can record at any moment. I have a couple extra batteries with me, and I just use one lens. I don't like having to switch lenses out there in the snow. It's, I use one zoom lens that has a range. I was shooting a Black Magic Mini Ursa, just shooting Apple ProRes 4K, somewhat even compressed video, but you can get much more time that way out of it on your card. And in times where it's raining or snowing, which is often, it sounds absurd, I'm actually recording with one hand, and I'm holding an umbrella, just your basic umbrella, over the camera. That's it. If someone took a picture from the outside, I think it would look, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. But that's the way it works for me, is just the simple approach.
I think it worked.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You were the only, you were the director, camera guy, sound guy.
Yeah. I mean, my approach with this, outside of, some of the more formal interviews when folks are really sitting down, in that case, I would have a mic, like a stand and a boom hanging over them. But for all the footage of people walking around and spontaneous sound bites and following, I have no tripod. I have no sound gear other than the microphones on the camera. And then when I talk to people, I try and get the camera physically close to their face, because the audio quality is better. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because the audio was pretty tight.
Yeah.
For just being the camera mic. Wow.
It's a boom. Let me explain. It's an external mic, but it's physically attached to the camera. But it's not a lav. It's not. I really get frustrated with the gear. I've made 4 films in a very low budget format, and I know how easily you can get consumed with gear, and that becomes the center of everything you're doing, and you forget about the story, and it's just, how do I get the shot? And I like to be focused on what is the person saying,
mm-hmm.
and not the gear.
Yeah, I get you. Podcasting the same. You can get obsessed with gear. You can get probably just obsessed with gear as John was obsessed with seeing Bigfoot again.
Right.
in everything you do, you can get obsessed with gear to the point where sometimes you might forget, what you're trying to do with that gear. Or accomplish.
I agree. Totally agree. Within the movie, when you cut back to John's story, having a t-shirt biz that went bankrupt in 2008, which was like the recession.
Yeah.
His wife passing away. I mean, it's a very compelling story that gets us to a guy who he latched onto this. He needed something to spend his time, to be obsessed with, because other things in his life, it's gone.
Right. I felt like the story was, he was looking for Bigfoot, but it was more or less that he was either searching for himself or even trying to forget everything around him. But
I'm so happy that both of you saw that in this narrative, because that's exactly what it's about. It's really about John Green.
Right.
His life and what's driving him. And sort of back to is it a documentary? Is it fiction? This is another area to comment in where all that backstory is 100% real. If this, were fully a documentary, those sequences wouldn't have changed at all, or how they were captured. His t-shirt business, his wife dying, his father, the story of his father passed away the last time he saw him, sort of how his business imploded. All those things really happened to John. And again, it's why I don't also like to say that this is fully fiction film, because it's
right.
I said earlier about mockumentary. Sorry I used that term, because now, again, talking with you, I'm understanding the movie even deeper and deeper.
Right.
And I'm so happy I had the opportunity to ask the person who made the film about it, because I feel like I'm a little bit obsessed with the film and John and even just the whole thing, how you made this. So very interesting. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, like, the movie, again, first watching it, it was heartwarming at times, because you wanted to root for John, especially when people were like criticize him or he didn't, they weren't believing him 100%, but then it was heartbreaking to watch him just be so obsessed. So I found the duality, just almost times like, man, is this movie going to make me cry?
I know.
No, again, I'm so glad that you saw all these layers in the film, and that it's certainly more than just about is Bigfoot real or not,
right?
Which is fun too and important. But I'm glad you sort of caught these themes in John's story, because that was as important to me as anything else when we were filming what I was trying to represent.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I do have a question about, his friends with the Mount Si Fitness Center and the people in that little circle. They were just as interesting. Like, you could almost do a prequel or sequels with these characters, because they were blowing my mind a little bit. There was the one dude that got so angry. Because John was like, no, I don't think these people have seen Bigfoot. What they're describing doesn't seem right. Then you cut to them, and they're angry at John.
Right.
And I was like, this is amazing how they're friends one minute, fighting the next over these little details about Bigfoot.
Right.
No, I mean, and that is really the community here in North Bend. All those people live right here, right? Now my hometown. And in particular, that gym, Mount Si Sports and Fitness, is just full of unique characters. And again, most of this is 100% true. I mean, Ben Cockman, the owner of that gym, what we see in there about where he's living, renting a friend's basement studio, the fact he has sort of a hard time finding a girlfriend, and we kind of go into his past with his relationships. Then he moves out. He moves in with his daughter because his daughter went through a separation. He's living in his daughter's, garage. That's all real. That's all happening in real time as we are filming this, and I'm, documenting it because it's so fascinating, and like this has to be part of this movie, Yeah.
What was the John's friend, Rachel?
Sarah.
Does he really come out, when he's, and hang out there for a day or two at her house? And is she also friends with Ben? And I was like, okay, this story could definitely go in a different direction right now. Yeah.
So that is an area, we're talking honestly about how this film is made. That would be more in the realm of adding a piece to the narrative that's a little more fictionalized.
Okay.
So Sarah, his real name is Monica, and Monica is a personal trainer at Mount Si Sports and Fitness, and we had to do everything we possibly could to sort of dumb her looks down, everything to make her, because she's not. It needed to be somewhat believable that she might be interested in John, and so we did everything we can to try and make her strip away all her beauty, natural beauty, which at times she wasn't maybe all that excited about the no makeup. And I made her wear some of my own clothes, T-shirts and different things. Anyway, in real life, she's very, very friendly person, very sort of free-spirited person. She's known Ben at the gym for a long time, but she has a very serious boyfriend. She has kids. She's a family woman. She's not really what you see in this film. She's basically acting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honey, I'm dominating
it's
conversation.
Okay.
Anything?
No, I feel like at the beginning of the film, John said, "I want to prove it exists," and I feel like a lot of people have that feeling, not just for Bigfoot, like they want to prove something. And I think that's what I loved about the film, was that he wanted to prove this, and he was going to do whatever he could to do it. But
yeah,
no, I'm glad you caught that too. I really love the theme, or what's in certain people, of giving it everything you have to accomplish the goal. And even if maybe you don't accomplish it, just that fact that you give it 100% in everything that you do. I mean, honestly, that's what it takes to make a film this way, or anyway,
right.
Or what you're doing, I'm sure, in many ways. If you want to have, your podcast with everything else you're doing probably in your life and your family, you just have to be so dedicated to do it.
Right.
And make it happen. And that goes for everything, for looking for Bigfoot. And so when I wanted to show that in this story, that John's given it everything he possibly can. I mean, I was a big fan of Kobe Bryant and his Mamba mentality with everything that he did. And I would think about that with John. I'm like, what's his Mamba mentality out here? So.
Yeah.
With the whole thing, the movie's called Hunting Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
You're the filmmaker, writer, director. Is there any part of you that, believes or does not believe in Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, I'd say going into this project, I wasn't all that interested necessarily in exploring really that question. Is Bigfoot real, or is he not real? I just wasn't. But as we went through the process of making the film, and as I talked to so many people who have genuine experiences, and I mean genuine as it's real to them, or it really is real, but it's real to them. And that's what's important. Speaking to all these people, and then Bob Pyle, who is the expert, whatever that may mean in this film, it certainly opens up your mind to the possibility that it could exist. And I mean, in talking with Bob, he thinks there's a reasonable chance that there's 500 to 5,000 of these primates living between Northern California and Alaska. And I think it's, pretty easy to just dismiss that. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's also good to have an open mind sometimes. I mean, stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly have the space and the woods and the terrain that it could be possible. I mean, I'm leaning more. I'm in the believer category because, well, like John, I want to know it exists.
This is not a perfect way of describing that Bigfoot could be real, but I do think about this. Are you familiar with Christopher Knight, the Hermit of the North Pond up in Maine?
No, but I'm writing that down.
Yeah, write them down.
Yeah, I know, it's a great story. The hermit of the North Pond lived for 27 years out in not even a very remote area near some lake cabins in Maine. And he was just off the beaten path. He was just off the trails. You know, if you walk down a trail, he was like half a mile outside a trail. And it was just an area nobody ever went. People just don't go there. In fact, they tried to find this guy for decades and never could. When they finally did find him, he wasn't even really in a remote area. He was just in an area in the forest that people just don't go to. And it got me to think there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of square mile of forest land all over Washington, Oregon, California that really nobody ever goes to, ever. I mean, they just don't. And who's to say there's not, necessarily something or a community out in those areas?
I like the way you think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the movies, you've had it shown in a few theaters. Is that right?
Yeah, it showed in about a dozen theaters, mainly here in Washington, and some in Oregon. And it was a challenging time to try and put a movie in a theater, clearly with a pandemic. Yeah. And in our state, we have very strict mandates as well. Okay. So that on top made a challenge, but it still did well. Here in North Bend, it was sold out number of nights. The theater was completely full. It was a lot of fun. And, it did well. It did well in sort of context of what was going on with, many people, I think, being nervous to go inside in the closed area during that time.
And I guess it's coming to VOD very soon, like February
15th. Yeah, Amazon Prime as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. It'll be available for digital release on those platforms. And actually it's available right now for pre-order on Apple, download, I think iTunes or whatever their, movie version is of that. And from what I've heard from Xenon, sounds like it'll be available on quite a few other platforms in the near future. So
that's awesome. Cool. We'll definitely put links to that in the show notes. Yeah. I just want to say that again, thank you for sharing the movie with us.
Right.
I really did enjoy it. It looks great. Mm-hmm. Knowing what you went through, even the sound when you're walking around the woods, it's great.
Yeah.
I think people will enjoy it. It definitely brings a different aspect to it when you think of the movie's about Bigfoot. Brings a different angle to that because sometimes it's not all about Bigfoot. It's about the people that believe in Bigfoot. So thoroughly enjoyed it. If there's anything you want to plug, let the listeners know.
Well, I'd just like to thank you both for your time in watching Hunting Bigfoot and thinking about it and commenting on it and your kind words, and for having taken time to talk with me here today. I very much appreciate that a lot. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Well, February 15th, the movie comes out. I'll put links in the show notes to your website about it, where they can get it on Amazon. I recommend it. Yeah. I think anybody watching, you'll you'll have an enjoyable time and maybe make you think a little bit about what you're obsessed about. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.